Requirements. You might be wondering, okay, so I know what Frida is, I know what certificate pinning bypass is, what do I need, Uncle Rat? Well, if you want to get started, you'll need to connect a real device via USB, or you need to download Genymotion and create an emulator. For the recommended emulator, I would recommend you guys create a Google Pixel XL device, and the least amount of Android version I would recommend is 7.1 Plus for the reasons that I mentioned before. Some applications, they might not support older Android versions. And then we need to install those Frida packages for Python. We can either do that using the Python module pip, or we can directly install it using pip. It'll depend a little bit on how the setup of your Python is on your computer. After that, we also need the platform tools. And we need the Android device bridge, debugger bridge. Sorry, I noted down device bridge, but it's the debugger bridge, of course. And that's one of the platform tools that's provided for us. So we'll download those entire platform tools. We'll extract all of them to our local drive, just like we see in here. If we go back to the documents real quick, and we'll go to the mobile course. Here we have the platform tools, and in here we have ADB. Now, you also need the following script to bypass certificate pinning. This is a universal script. Some apps will use more custom certificate pinning and will need more custom scripts for those apps. But again, that's a little bit outside of the scope of this course. Now, to start, first of all, start your emulator and then go to settings and the developer options. And in there you can tap to enable USB debugging. That will be important because if that's not enabled, we can't go and actually interact with the device from our computer. We'll need to do that for sure, especially if we want to work with ADB. And then we also want the path where we extracted our ADB2 into our path variables. This is so that when we type ADB, we know that the command prompt will actually scan all the paths that we have in our path variable, and then it will look in those paths if it can find an executable with the name that we've typed. So to do that on Windows, we can just copy the location of the ADB path. For example, C users, downloads, platform tools. And then we can press the Windows R key and we can enter sysdm.cpl and whatever pops up. And then we can click on the advanced tab. Now in the system variable window, you can find a path variable, which you can click to edit. And you can click new, which will add a new entry for a path, and you just enter the path that you entered in here. So simple as that. Then you've added ADB to your path variables. You should always restart your command prompt as well. That's pretty important, otherwise Windows won't load those new path variables. On Linux, it's pretty similar, only we have to change a file there. I still have Windows on here, but of course that's not Windows, that's Linux. That's also changed in the final version of this presentation. We need to change to our home directories, and then we need to open the bash source file, bash rc file and we need to add a following line, and we need to replace that directory here, which is not the JDK directory, but the local ADB there, of course. Again, will also be changed. You need to replace this with the directory of your ADB, which will be the platform tools directory again. And then you need to export that path variable. So that's what this command is going to do. We'll save that file, and then we'll use the source command to force Linux to reload that bash rc file. Normally, every time you log in, that also happens automatically. But since we don't want to log out and log in every time that we add something to our path variable, we can force that using the source command. For Frida, okay, so now we have our mobile emulator running. We actually need to set up a Frida server on that mobile device. And to do that, we need to get the Arch version of the device. by running this command, and this will run that ADB tool, which is why we had to add it to our path variables. And it will run the shell command, and it will get the property, this specific one. That will show us which version of Android we are working with, and we need to download and extract, really important guys, extract the server version of Frida from this web page here. And you need to make sure it's the server version, and you need to make sure that you extract it as well. Then we need to push Frida server to the device and give it permissions to execute, of course. So for Windows, that would be ADB push and then your Windows path to the Frida server. And this is the path on the device, which would be data local temp, just the temp folder. And on Linux, we can do the same ADB push and then the ADB path to the Frida server, only the Linux path this time. And again, push it to the data local temp. And then we want to change mode to 777 so we can execute this. And we want to do this to the Frida server. Now your file might not be named Frida server, so be mindful that you actually use the correct file name in here. Now to set up Burp, really easy, just open Burp Suite, go to your proxy tab and then open these options tabs here. And then you have a button, import export CA certificate. If you click that, you can export your certificate in a DIR format, which is really cool. Make sure you do that in this case because we need that certificate. And then we need to push that certificate onto our device. We need that later for Frida, so it's very important that this step goes right. And we do this using the ADB push command, and we will push our cacert.dir to the data local temp folder again, and we'll rename it to the cert extension. This is important because we'll need that cert extension later on. Make sure you have that correct. Requirements. You might be wondering, okay, so